East Coast bias, Monday and Tuesday for you friends on FanDuel TV. We have the triple threat ready to rock after the first 4 days of the NCAA tournament. John Jastremski alongside Joe House and Raheem Palmer. We also are joined by Anthony DeBundo, who's been spending a lot of time with me, whether it's in the wee hours on Friday night, whether it's a bonus pot on Tuesday. So we've gotten our fair share of DeBundo, and we got all sorts of takes, all sorts of reactions from what we saw first 4 days of the tournament. House, I'll start with you. It was pretty simple. If you wanted Cinderella to make an appearance at the ball, you were going to be very, very disappointed with the way these first 4 days played out. A lot of favorites, a lot of chalk. That's my grand takeaway. Watching these games, and there were a couple of good ones, especially on Saturday and Sunday, but the big favorites specifically, the favorites of 6 or more points, really had their way in these first couple of days of the tournament.
Yeah, and I will say this, JJ, we're down to just 4 conferences in this Sweet 16. And so the idea of the concentration of power finding itself in these power conferences, like shocker, the SEC has 7 teams in the Final 16. But yes, I found myself as I got serious with my betting card, and I'll just, thank the gambling gods. I just sat down last minute and started playing favorites. And I didn't have a huge card. I think I went 12-6 over the course of the weekend. But it really
That's a good weekend in my book, House, at 12-6. That's okay.
It was laying into those favorites that were in that minus 5.5 to minus 9.5 class. It seemed like quite a bit of those guys handled their business. The thing for me, the biggest takeaway, hello, Duke. I mean, over the course of last week, we had a conversation, this group of us, this 4 of us, and I was worried. I had some skepticism around Duke because I just wasn't confident about that ankle with Cooper Flagg. And then over the course of the week, it became apparent that he was practicing. The reports were that he was going to be fine. When we did our show right before the tournament, we said, well, this is Duke's region to win, to lose, to win, to lose. And indeed, Duke's a truck. So that's the biggest takeaway for me, JJ.
No doubt about it. Raheem, favorites rule supreme. You see any parallels, similarities? And it's impossible to say UConn, right? Because last year, and really over the last 2 years, UConn 2 years ago was a 4. Last year, they were a 1. They weren't tested. They steamrolled through the tournament. They didn't play a classic white knuckler type of game. Point differential, though, Raheem, right now for Duke, it's eye-popping. You sensing that sort of comparison between those two, or am I jumping the gun on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I thought of as well. I mean, when you look at Duke, they beat Mount St. Mary's 93-49. Baylor 89-66. It just feels like you could blindly play Duke against the spread, and they're probably going to cover throughout this entire tournament. And I think Connecticut is a good example because you saw last year, they covered every single game. And if you're looking at the way this tournament is going right now, favorites are 28-24 against the spread. But if you look at favorites of 6 or more points, 19-9, 66% against the spread. So it just feels like those big favorites and the disparity between the good teams and the bad teams, not even the good teams and the bad teams, the great teams and everybody else is just glaring. And I think you almost need to capitalize on that.
Okay, AD. A lot of Duke love. We kind of saw that coming. First 4 days, now that you've digested everything, your biggest takeaway.
We shouldn't have been surprised by this. And when you look through the numbers and the adjusted ratings on some of these teams and just how strong the crop of the upper tier echelon of college basketball was this year. And you could do a whole debate. We could do a first take style show about why it is and what's wrong with college. I'm not interested in that. What I'm interested in is the results of it. And here's the stat that I think kind of is instructive to just how dominant these top tier teams were this year. I went up and I pulled the number of teams with an adjusted offensive efficiency above 120 on KenPom every year. In 2014, there were 5. 2015, there were 6. Then there was 10, 9, 8, 7. So pretty consistently throughout the 2010s, you'd have about 5 to 10 teams who were in that tier of elite offensive teams. Then it was a little bit of a lull. 2020, there was only 1, 2021, 5, 2022, 5, 2023, 4. Last year was 12. This year, there are 17 teams with an adjusted offensive efficiency above 120. And so it's just much harder for these mid-major teams to keep up, because back in the day, as people like to talk, the mid-majors could shoot the three at a higher level. They could win the math battle. They could use analytics to be a rim and three team and optimize their basketball approach to overcome, athleticism or talent disadvantages. But now everybody plays that way. And now they just play that way with better athletes. And it's much harder, I think. And that is ultimately, I think, as big of a problem as the NIL transfer portal stuff that people are theorizing about is. And I think that's a big part of what we're seeing here, where as the top teams get smarter, it gets harder for the middle tier teams to keep up with that with their limited resources. And I think that's as big a part of what's happening as anything else, because the 1s, 2s, and 3 seeds were stronger than they've ever been. Will Warren wrote about this before the tournament on his Substack, and I think that's playing out now in front of us.
And you look, 1s, 2s, and 3s, there's only 1 2 seed that's not going to the round of 16, who we'll get to, and it was my Final Four pick. RIP Rick Pitino, St. John's Red Storm 2024-2025. And, DeBundo, that analysis I think is spot on as far as, hey, mid-majors, three-point shot, taking advantage of the math, also taking advantage of the camaraderie. Now, you brought it up Friday when we were doing the pod. There are plenty of examples of weird and wonky Final Fours. I mean, we have Florida Atlantic in the Final Four just a couple of years ago. We had schools like Oakland winning games and Yale winning games. So, this is a year-by-year type thing. I don't think every single year is going to be, hey, nothing but SEC, Big Ten, and Big 12 teams going to the second weekend. You know what I mean, DeBundo? I think you did nail it. Yes, it's harder for the mid-major now. Yes, it's going to be more of a challenge. But don't look at the next 5 years and say, yeah, it's just going to be chalk, chalk, chalk every time we hit the Sweet 16, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, I think every year is a case-by-case basis, because I remember people making arguments 2 years ago about how actually the NIL and the transfer portal was leveling the playing field and increasing parity. And that actually hasn't happened. And so now people are saying the opposite. So I kind of think we could become prisoners of the moment a bit in this. Certainly the one concerning thing that I did see over the weekend, Longwood's head coach left his post to take an assistant job at Virginia. And somebody highlighted that as a concerning trend. That is the kind of thing that would concern me if I were a college basketball mid-major enthusiast, where you have these low to mid-major head coaches taking assistant jobs at bigger programs. If that's where the financial incentives start to head, then there's a bigger college basketball conversation that has to happen. But until that, becomes more of a problem, I think they're still going to be okay. We still had some upsets. I mean, Colorado State was within a basket of the Sweet 16.
What a game that was. That was the game of the weekend, in my opinion.
He traveled.
You think he traveled? I didn't think so.
I didn't think he traveled.
Gather step.
I didn't think he traveled.
They never call that a travel in basketball.
I mean, I wouldn't want them to call that, because everybody knows if they called that in that moment and took
I would
that
have lost
moment,
my mind. I would have got
it would have been brutal. But he definitely traveled.
I'll give him a pass on it. Queen is king in Maryland, at least for a day. I want to ask you about the other big game here, Raheem, and we'll get to it. We'll do a little roundtable. UConn and Florida was fantastic, and the line was basically double digits. The metrics were clearly in the favor of the Florida Gators. Yet you knew, if you were watching this game, in the first 4 minutes, I said, UConn's come to play today. UConn is not intimidated by Florida in any way. They shot it terribly. They were right there at the end. Clayton for Florida brought them home. Florida was as tight as a drum in that game. They were missing free throws. They were missing open looks. They looked spooked at times. And I'm sitting there saying to myself, oh, my God, is UConn going to do this again? Are they going to be Florida, have a road to the Final Four that doesn't have a 1 seed? They knocked them off. St. John's, the team that beat them twice, is going to be out as a 2 seed, and we're going to be sitting there, and Dan Hurley's going to be stomping his feet, and UConn's going to be in the Final Four. Florida found a way. So, Raheem, I'll ask you this. Is that game more telling about the mettle and the fortitude of UConn in their program? Or is it more telling for Florida, perhaps, and the warning signs for them maybe in the second weekend?
I think it's more telling about UConn. I think look, they played one of the best teams in the country. I mean, Florida's only lost 4 times this entire year. And I also think you got to give Florida some credit because it was 61-58 with 3 minutes to go. And Walter Clayton had a turnover. And it looked like UConn might be able to put this thing away. And at that point, Florida took control of the game. And, they gritted and found a way in crunch time to get it done. So I think you got to give Florida some credit because they didn't play well. You mentioned they didn't shoot well from the free throw. They didn't shoot free throws well, and they ended up getting it done. And I think that's all that matters. Sometimes you got to win an ugly game. They won an ugly game.
I'll say it said a bit about both. I mean, UConn is a tough prep. They run such an intricate offense. It's really hard to flip on 2 days and be like, all right, here we go. UConn's coming to town. Let's get ready for them. But Florida did struggle in a lower possession game. And I think that's the one thing that I've always said. And I said last week, I'm like, if they get slowed down, and this was the 4th fewest possessions of any Florida game this season, if they get slowed down and forced to execute in the half court, can you beat them in that kind of game? I think the answer is yes. UConn did not turn the ball over. They kept Florida out of transition where they are lethal, and they made this a half-court game. And really, JJ, UConn got a lot of open looks that they missed.
Wide open looks.
They shot really poorly from 3. If Caravan or McNeely shoot better, that game flips. I mean, UConn went 8 of 29 from 3. Florida was 9 for 19. And like you said, Clayton got hot late. And it wasn't like Clayton was hitting easy shots. I mean, those were some tough threes that he made over defenders. So I think, you come away with a bit of a red flag on Florida, a team that slows them down in the half court, that has the size to match them, can beat them. And I think they're going to have, of the 1 seeds, I think they clearly have the toughest path to the Final Four.
I totally agree with that because, House, you look at the way this kind of shakes out. Duke, as I said at the start of the tournament, my God, Cupcake City. I mean, Cupcake City at the bottom half of that region. Sorry, Bama. I'm not buying that they're going to be able to go and slow down the Duke Blue Devils. I think Bama might have their hands full with BYU, which we will get to when we start breaking down these Sweet 16 games. I'm going to be stunned if Duke's not in the Final Four. Houston is getting, if they get there, is getting a slobber knocker with either Kentucky or Tennessee and the way that kind of shakes out. And then Auburn might be looking at a team that they know from the conference in Ole Miss, or you're talking about Tom Izzo and Michigan State. So, that's a tough road for Auburn the way I see it. But Florida, Maryland, size, unbelievable starting 5. And if they get by Maryland and Texas Tech or Arkansas stand in their way, House, Florida, I'll give UConn credit. They're tough. They're well coached. Hurley, say what you want about him. The guy is an absolute zen. He's brilliant as far as drawing up offensive sets, getting the team ready to play. They competed their asses off in the game. I'd be a little worried about Florida after what I saw on Sunday. I think they can be beat.
Yeah, I agree with this assessment. And once again, this group, when we were all convened last week trying to do some handicapping, some forecasting, we wondered aloud, is there a UConn team in the pool this year? Who can replicate what UConn did the 2 previous seasons in terms of the impressive covers, the impressive wins? The answer to me now seems to be Duke, but I wondered aloud if it was Florida because of the way that Florida had played coming into the tournament, their versatility. Well, we just saw a blueprint. We saw a blueprint out of the way, and all kudos to Danny Hurley, all kudos to UConn. Masterful job. We saw exactly the vulnerability of Florida with a brand new head coach in terms of the experience deficit that he possesses with this group of advancing very far into this tournament. And Maryland possesses the elements to replicate that blueprint that we just saw out of UConn. If Maryland knocks down threes, this kid Rodney Rice shoots 37% from 3, and Maryland is undefeated when he gets 10 shots up. If they can shoot the 3 and knock down the 3, this is going to be a knockdown, drag-out battle because they for sure, Maryland, with Reese and Queen, have the size inside. Now, for Maryland, it will be the discipline to play a fewer possession kind of game, and that's an open question with Kevin Willard. So, but Florida for sure, because Texas Tech was also very impressive. Their calling card defense, top 10 defense, they're just ready to hammer. And JT Toppin has thrown himself into some conversations here. It was very impressive what we saw out of Texas Tech. So I agree with the idea of Florida having a tough road ahead of it, fellas.
One thing I really liked about Texas Tech, they won in two very different ways over the weekend. And in the first game, UNC Wilmington said, we are going to double Toppin every time you throw it into him. We're going to basically sit with 5 guys in the paint and dare you to shoot. And Texas Tech attempted 46 threes, and they didn't shoot well. And so it was kind of a game, and you might have looked at it and been like, wait a second, why is Texas Tech, I was looking at it, why is Texas Tech, who I have in my Final Four, who I bet to win this region, why are they up 3 with UNCW with 8 minutes to go? A little scary, but they survived a bad shooting night. Then they play Drake, who comes with a completely different coverage, takes away the 3. Texas Tech makes 1 3, and they win the game going away because Toppin dominates on the inside. They get everything at the rim. So I love that kind of team, a team that can throw and adjust to whatever teams throw at them and win in different ways. That's why I feel better about my Texas Tech pick than I did before the bracket came out. They do need Chance McMillan, though. He's their best shooter. I think they need him back, and we don't know. They keep saying he's going to come back, and then they don't play him. So I don't know.
We got a lot more to discuss, guys. We have the Sweet 16 lines, and we will recap the bet we're the most proud of after the first 4 days of the tournament, the bet that caused us the most regret over the first 4 days of the tournament. East Coast Bias Boys, coming right back. All right, boys, welcome back. Here are the lines. I'm going to give you all of them, DeBundo. And then I want your first reaction to be what stands out. Alabama is laying 4.5 against BYU. Florida is laying 6.5 against Kevin Willard's Maryland Terrapins. Duke laying 8.5 against an Arizona team that was tested against Oregon. Duke, a little under 10. Your Red Raiders, 5.5 favorites over Calipari's Arkansas team. Michigan State. Now, this opened at 2.5. It is now at 3.5 against the Ole Miss team, the Runner Rebs. Tennessee, who lost to Kentucky both times in the regular season, laying 4.5 in their game against the Cats. Auburn laying 7.5 against Michigan. Houston laying 7.5 against Purdue. That is every Sweet 16 line. Anthony, the first thing that stood out when I read all of those numbers was what?
The Red Raiders. I think they're a little short against Arkansas. We just talked about them before the break, so I don't need to kind of repeat what I just said. But, you know, Arkansas got into the mud, and they were willing to play a scrappy, ugly game with a team that could not shoot the ball in St. John's, a team whose best player disappeared and then got benched, a team whose best defensive guard fouled out on a very controversial call late, Kadari Richmond. I think that said more about St. John's than it did about Arkansas. And I know that, you know, Calipari in this kind of underdog mentality role has kind of flipped the script on us after years of losing as a favorite. And I think it's a fun story. I think the Hogs are a good team, but Texas Tech has, in my opinion, an elite offense that we've seen now beat you in different ways, and they can almost slow this game down, and they can make Arkansas execute in the half court. I don't think they can do it. Again, this is not too far removed from an Arkansas team that really was dead to rights against Kansas until Hunter Dickinson threw the game away in round 1. So I ultimately think that Arkansas had a nice run here, and it ends at the Sweet 16. And about a week ago, this line would have been 7.5. I'm not going to overreact. I like the Tech Red Raiders as my favorite. And upsets, I'm not sure yet.
You're still mulling over the upsets. Raheem, I'm looking at BYU, who to me has been a terrific offensive team all year. And I know a lot of people in the Sharp community went after Alabama in the round of 32. They didn't play a great game against Robert Morris. I think a lot of smart people hopped on St. Mary's, getting a 5.5. I'm not just you, Anthony DeBundo. I feel like that was a general consensus, and I didn't bet that game. I wanted absolutely no part of that game because it was one of those games to me where I knew, hey, pace is going to decide everything here. And when I watched Alabama start getting up and down the court over the first few minutes, I go, this ain't going to end well for St. Mary's. And newsflash, it didn't end well for St. Mary's. But Raheem, I like that BYU team. I love the way they played against Wisconsin. They obviously had a terrific game against VCU. I'm going to be grabbing 4.5 with BYU. And I'll take a step further. I think BYU is going to beat Alabama.
I mean, I can see that. I mean, you look at Alabama, they don't play any defense. So if you have a team as good as offensively as BYU, it definitely makes some sense. How do you feel about that over?
It's a good question. It's a very, very good question. So if you're looking at the total, it's at 174.5. That's as good of an offensive team as BYU may be. And we know Alabama is an elite offensive team. That's a whole lot of points for him. You get off to a slow shooting start in one of these tournament games where kids get tight, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the highest total on the board in terms of the Sweet 16. So I just thought it was interesting.
Where are we on the rims? Do we know what the balls and the rims are going to look like?
Ball, that's it.
In Newark, you want me to go down there? I can go through the Holland Tunnel now, guys, and sneak into the arena. You want me to give it a little test?
Yeah, see if you can steal the balls from the equipment manager closet and see what we got going on here. Yeah, I don't know. The one thing I will note, the Midwest is playing in Indianapolis, and normally they would just play it at the Pacers Arena at Gamebridge, but they're playing it at half of Lucas Oil.
Because they love it, man. Listen, that's basketball town, Indianapolis. They want to get as many people in there as possible, and that's something to take note of, House, in that region, because that Midwest region, Kentucky is going to travel like crazy to go and get their fans up to Indianapolis. That's going to happen. And then you have where's Purdue playing? Are they in Indianapolis too?
Yeah, an hour from West Lafayette. Yeah.
The only thing is, House, I don't know if Purdue has the guns to go and play, with Auburn. That's the question.
Yeah, I won't be.
Well, Houston, excuse me. They're playing Houston. My bad.
I won't be participating in any Purdue. But I think Tennessee should travel well as well. Tennessee, Kentucky, I think both of those fan bases will travel. It's not an impossible trip. The one game on this entire slate that I fired on as soon as the lines came out was Duke. The line opened at 8.5. I mean, it's up to 9.5 now. I'm playing 9.5 also, as long as it's under double digits. This is my UConn team. And the sort of quiet, underrated story with this Duke team is Tyrese Proctor is on fire. That man, he's shooting over 60% from three over the past 3 games. So Flag looks excellent. Canoople's doing Canoople things. They have the lockdown center with my guy Maluk or Malash. I'm sorry. Apologies to that beautiful kid and all of his lockdown defense. But if Proctor keeps shooting 60%, let me go. Let's go, man. Duke by double digits.
House, I can't believe I'm doing this, man. I'm taking sides against the family. Now, I'm not betting it yet because to me, it's the sort of game where everybody's going to bet Duke. If I like Arizona to go and play a competitive game, I can wait until Thursday. I feel like that number is just going to keep climbing and climbing until it can't climb no more. But the bundle, Arizona with the guards, they're dangerous, man. Caleb Love, if you remember, a couple of years ago, playing for North Carolina, had a moment of all moments, sending Coach K into retirement. Can the guards of Arizona make that a competitive game? I want to believe yes, AD. I think that's going to be. I think Duke will have a harder. Let's put it this way: Duke will have a harder time, I think, with Arizona than they will the next game. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think I could see the case, maybe, but also we saw this game earlier this year, and Duke pretty much handled them. It was Arizona's worst offensive game of the season. They basically got nothing in the half court. They're not good in the late shot clock because it ends up being bad shots. They're not a great half court offense. They rely so much on transition. I don't want to go against. I'm not going against Duke. I'm not doing it. So, for me, it's Duke or pass. And you could say the number might be a little high when it gets to 10.5, 10. Sure. Maybe we just don't know how good Duke is yet. That's the other part of this. Same thing with the Alabama under. It's like, it might be a point or two too high, but do you really want to put money on the under and say, maybe they don't have a great day, because then it's just layup lines. Both teams are happy to contribute to layup lines in this game. So I don't know. I would be Duke or nothing there. I don't really trust Arizona.
I'm getting in front of the freight train. It happens. Raheem, out of any of those lines, is there one you like early?
I would go Ole Miss versus Michigan State. You look at Ole Miss. They're a better three-point shooting team, 35% to 31%. They take better care of the ball, third in turnover percentage to 138. And they force more turnovers. And then more importantly, if you look at that game between Michigan State and New Mexico, they shot 28 free throws. Like, if they don't go to the line 28 times, that's anyone's game right there. So I think Ole Miss is absolutely live. I saw what they did to Iowa State. I was a little frustrated, a little angry because I'm watching that game and it's 13-5. And I'm like, my ticket's going to go to the Sweet 16. I got a nice little free roll. I could probably sell this on Prop Swap. And then next thing you know, there's a 20-2 run and the game is all but over at halftime. So, I'm putting some respect on Ole Miss's name right now. I think this was at +4. It got bet down to 3.5. They got a real chance at winning this outright. Anthony gave the stat about teams who weren't ranked in preseason. I think this is the last one left.
Anthony, that's an interesting one. And I'm very bullish on Michigan State. Don't you get the sense, though, that's going to line up to be what we like to call the classic pros versus Joes game on, either Thursday or Friday? Because I feel like you will have a lot of folks going to the window saying Tom Izzo in March, Michigan State's been a top 10 team all year. It's a small number. I'm going to go and take it. I think Raheem's analysis on Ole Miss is very fair. And I'll throw one more thing in there, Raheem. Chris Beard is one of the most underrated, badass coaches in all college basketball. Look at what he did at Texas Tech. He had that team in the championship game. Would have had more success at Texas if it wasn't for what, transpired there. And now he's killing it at Ole Miss. The Bundo is someone that's got that 30-1 ticket on Michigan State. I am petrified of this spot for them. Petrified.
Yeah, I'm in a tough survivor spot. I got to choose between Michigan State, Ole Miss, Auburn, or like Texas Tech, Florida. So Thursday is a tricky day for Survivor, but and Friday too. But I will say, Ole Miss race to 10, +110. I'm 2-0 on my race to 10 bets.
Hey, we hit Arkansas the other day on Friday night. I was proud of us.
I tweeted this on Sunday. I went with the Lobos race to 10. We have seen this Michigan State team come out slow over and over and over again. It takes them a minute to get locked in. They're not a good half-court offense, so when the game starts and it's a little bit like walk the ball up the floor, get into a set, go, they kind of stink. And so they struggle early in these games. It's not until they're able to really get the rebounding and transition game going later that they kind of lock in and improve. And so Ole Miss, I think, is a better half-court offense for sure. So race to 10, +110. I'm on the Rebs. Gonna try to
That's a family house. There's such outrageous bets to make. We got everybody doing them when we were down in Raleigh for the last few days. I introduced a group of fine gentlemen to race to 10s, and there's nothing like it come NCAA tournament time. Do it responsibly. Have a little fun. They're a whirlwind of excitement, House.
Well, Cousin Sal was out at the Jimmy Kimmel Comedy Club in Vegas. They were throwing up videos all weekend long of their successes with the race to 10s. Yeah, I hope America is paying attention to the race to 10s. I like this Ole Miss side quite a bit. I'm joining this. 49% from 3 in this tournament so far. They had no issue really at all with dispensing with Iowa State. And you guys have all touched on it. Michigan State has a hard time scoring. They don't shoot the ball well. 4 for 15 from 3-point range against New Mexico. They have to offensive rebound to score. Their defense is excellent. It's a grit and grind kind of thing, but that makes them extra susceptible to a team that comes in and shoots. Now, will Ole Miss remain hot? It's possible. If they shoot the ball even 40% from 3, that should be enough. I love grabbing the 3.5 here.
Yeah, the thing is, Ole Miss is not going to turn it over, like you said. I mean, they played one of the best havoc-inducing defenses in the country in Iowa State and tore them apart. They were plenty prepared for that havoc. And then, Beard defenses are famously, it's called the no middle. You just don't get to the rim against them. They take away the middle and dare you, basically make you shoot from the outside to beat them. It's not Michigan State's not going to be able to do that. So that'll be the interesting matchup to dive into over the course of the week.
Yeah, I think I want to grab the money line. And there's a part of me that just kind of wants to sell points. I think you can get Ole Miss -2.5 +164 on FanDuel Sportsbook right now. I'm kind of being a little bit aggressive, but when you have a team that shoots the 3 ball this well, I think there's a lot of room for winning within margin. So, I think I like the money line. I think if you want to get frisky, -2.5 plus 164 is on FanDuel Sportsbook right now.
Very conflicted on this, guys. I really want to get my Spartan ticket home to the Final Four. I really want to get it home, and I see a lot of trouble with this potential matchup. The bundle, we did not get to Kentucky, who to me was probably one of the most impressive teams I saw all weekend. I thought they were awesome on Sunday against the Fighting Illini of Illinois. What do you make of the two regular season matchups? Because that's going to be a narrative here, guys. Kentucky beat Tennessee twice in the regular season. Yet, Tennessee laying 4.5 in this game. You say, the bundle, big deal? Not a big deal with the fact that Kentucky beat them twice.
Yeah, Kentucky basically packed it in and dared Tennessee to shoot. Tennessee had bad games shooting. Kentucky is the classic team, though, like with their profile. Like, they have so many good shot makers. They don't really dominate the glass or the turnovers. They're kind of just the play up to their competition, but could lose to Vanderbilt, kind of team, or lose to one of the lower tier SEC teams, which all of them made the tournament. So I guess there aren't any this year, but you get the point. Kentucky is very much plays up and down to their competition. That makes for them for a very fun underdog kind of team. And they showed that against Illinois. Although I will still sign to say that we kind of knew Illinois had this in them, right? Like we saw Illinois' best on Thursday, and then
feast or famine, man.
And they were the most inconsistent team in the country all year. I thought that had as much to do with Illinois just being bad in that game. They missed a lot of threes. They turned the ball over a ton. It felt pretty self-inflicted too. Like Kentucky, I wasn't coming away like, wow, the Wildcats defense is swarming here. It's just like, what the hell is Indiana doing or Illinois doing? So I don't know. That's a tough one for me.
We'll come back, boys. We'll give you our favorite bet of the weekend, the bet we had the most regret for over the weekend. Then we'll send the bundle on his way. We'll recap the weekend in the NBA. We'll have some best bets, maybe looking ahead to Thursday. I don't know if the guys are ready. They might need 2 days. They may not. We'll find out. We'll come right back. All right, now the first 4 days are over and done with. Raheem, bet you're the most proud of over the weekend? Bet or pick that gave you the most agita, that gave you a whole lot of regret?
The bet that I'm most proud of, definitely staying away from UNC versus Ole Miss. I'm very proud of that one. I think that was the one to where I was.
You nailed that one, Raheem. You were all over that. You said, "Hey, that's a trap," and it was a trap.
I'm trying to think. What else did I have? Like, I don't even remember my bets at this point.
I'm trying to think. The one that we were heads up. There were a couple we were heads up on. I felt like we were splitting the baby on these. It's funny.
It was VCU versus.
VCU was not good to us.
BYU, yeah. I think I was on BYU in that game.
For me, it was freaking McNeese taking down Clemson. Oh, I'm still disgusted. I had Clemson going to the Sweet 16. Clemson had 14 points of offense. I mean, that was just as disgusting as it gets. I told this to the bundle. The bet I was most proud of was UCLA, who came out like gangbusters on Thursday. The mistake I made, the bundle, was taking UCLA the following Saturday against Tennessee, where they basically were the same team, and Tennessee had better athletes, better players, and could just do their style of basketball far better, So there's that.
I think the one I really was very disappointed about was definitely those two totals. I think I had the under in the first half under in the Houston game, and then I had the over in the Purdue the first Purdue game. I thought that was going to be a lot more high scoring. And then also I got the Yale game wrong. I thought Yale was going to be a lot more competitive, and they just weren't.
Yeah, I got the Yale game wrong also, but was not that upset about it. Kansas pissed me off. Kansas laying the 4.5 against Arkansas. Now, there was a bunch of question marks with this Arkansas team because we really haven't seen this version of them. It's a chemistry experiment, and really it's part of why I think Arkansas is kind of live in this game coming up against Texas Tech. It's just what Calipari with elite talent. It's elite talent across the board. They just have had guys in and out all season long with injuries, but Kansas was right there. They were looking like they were going to handle it. I like the idea of both Kansas and Connecticut showing sort of one last bit of pride. Kansas had no pride. They went out like babies. My favorite bet of the weekend. I'm so sorry, JJ, I made a lot of money on this. This made for a really profitable Saturday for me. It was unbelievable to me that, speaking of Arkansas, they were getting 7.5 points against St. John's. It just was way too many points, and based on priors that I don't think really applied. And that was a big ticket for me. It really made this week profitable for me.
Did you play Arkansas on the money line too, House?
No. I just, it's like, I'll just take all of these points. This is great. I'll just bet a big number that I like and grab all the points.
See, I give you credit on that. I thought Arkansas was going to struggle mightily offensively. I did. And like St. John's got a 4-point lead late in the first half. And I'm like, all right, they're in good shape here. They closed the half terribly. They came out in the second half, played like crap. And listen, Lewis pulled the John Starks. He was 3-19 in deciding game to the point where Pitino had to put his ass on the bench, which, by the way, was the right call because he was absolutely spooked. He was mentally broken and was not going to be able to respond the final couple minutes of the game. Rick Pitino knows his team a lot better than we do. You know, like that's one of those where he totally knows the feel. And you had Ejiofor basically trying to give him the pep talk with 10 minutes left. Like, come on, man, wake up. Took a selfish shot. Pitino said, all right, sayonara. So good job on that. AD, favorite bet, worst bet?
Worst bet, there's a list. Clemson Sweet 16.
Oh, that's all we want back. Can we get the mulligan, please? Please.
Yeah, I mean, I lost my first 5 bets, and I joked about this on the Friday pod with you, JJ. I looked at the clock when I finally saw one go through, and it was 9 p.m. And I thought to myself, man, that was a long day of not winning any bets. 0-5. But
sometimes you just got to see the ball go through the ocean now, you know?
Right. I thought about laying Duke money line Friday early just to feel something. Friday and Saturday were great. I will say the race to 10s were really fun. 2-0 on those. Enjoyed that. Iowa State in round 1 was good to me. And favorite overall bet was probably just not being afraid to lay some favorites. You know, I looked at Houston money line in round 2, UConn money line. They got a little sweaty there at the end on a few of them, but you know, just realizing that you're allowed to bet things that are minus money, and sometimes those are the right things to do. We fall in love with underdogs, and in a tournament that I went on everywhere I talked about this tournament, I said chalk is going to be good this year because of just how dominant these favorites are. And now we're here. I don't know that it'll be as true the second weekend because it's more competitive, but there's still like an upper echelon of top 4 teams that are so dominant here. Most disappointing in myself, though, Maryland yesterday. I laid it with the Terps. I bet against my favorite coach in this tournament, and that was a mistake. And I knew it from within 5 minutes. And Maryland survived, but long live Colorado State, Nico Medved. Great job. Proud of the boys for drawing up an incredible final second play, even though they didn't quite get home.
Hey, bottom line, Colorado State carrying the banner for your beloved Mountain West, where it wasn't a total out-and-out embarrassment. So
I have a question for you guys.
Yes.
I have a question for you guys. So if you look down the board right now, FanDuel Sportsbook, Duke is plus 230, Florida's plus 390, Houston is plus 550, and Auburn is plus 550. But you have a number of long shots here on the board. Is there any long shots, and I mean over 10 or 1, that you feel like has a great chance of winning this tournament or gives you good hedge value for later out of any of the teams?
Winning the tournament is going to be difficult because we're all, I think, very bullish on Duke. I know I picked Duke at the outset. The bundle, you did the same thing. And I know I don't feel great about this game in the Sweet 16, Raheem. So this is probably going to be a little contradictory, but it's Michigan State because of the way they defend, their pedigree, and their coach. If they get by this Ole Miss game, I think they're going to win in the Elite Eight. I do.
Oh.
And yeah, I do. I think if Michigan State wins this game, Ole Miss scares the crap out of me. I easily can see them losing this game. But you wanted value, I'm giving you value. Michigan State.
I mean, you're looking at right now, Ole Miss is 85-1. Arkansas is 110-1. Michigan
See,
is
I don't like
70-1.
Arkansas against Texas Tech, though. That's my problem.
Yeah.
I don't like them against the Red
I mean,
Raiders.
there's some gigantic numbers on the board. I mean, Michigan State, even before the tournament, they were 30-1, and they're still 23-1. And then you got Maryland at 30-1. So you have some huge numbers on the board, and you have to think that at least one of these long shots gets through to the Final Four.
What's Texas Tech?
Texas Tech is 20-1.
That's probably not enough because again, like you said, I think they'd have to probably beat Florida, Auburn, and one of Duke or Houston just to get there. And the odds of winning all of those games are 20-1 aren't that good.
So basically, it feels like the market is saying that these number one seeds are so good that no one else has a chance. That's what it feels like the market is saying.
Well, I think the market's telling you one of the one seeds are probably going to win it all.
I feel that way as well. Yeah. I mean, I would not. What's a parlay of Duke and Houston to win their regions?
Do it right now.
I think we're on a collision course for Duke and Houston to play in that second national semifinal on Final Four Saturday.
That pays plus 184. Duke and Houston.
Yep.
Houston is minus 110.
The show.
Duke is minus 170.
I like that too.
Let's make that a family play.
I'm in on that. Duke, Houston to win the region. You could get me on board with that.
If you were to add Florida, that's plus 390. And if you were to add Auburn for all the number one seeds, that's plus 731.
I would not play. I will say this, Raheem. One of these one seeds is getting knocked off. We will not have a repeat of the 2008 Final Four, where you had 4 number one seeds go. I do not think that happens.
Okay.
Somebody will lose.
Clip that for next Monday.
That's fine. Save it. Save it. One of the one seeds will lose.
I agree. And
just a
who
matter
do you
of
think
hope.
is the most likely one seed to lose?
Auburn.
I think Florida is super susceptible now.
I think Florida too.
And House, you were all in on Florida last week.
I saw what I saw.
That UConn game.
I trust the watchful eye of Joe House. I'll say that.
A lot of red flags for Joe House. Well, DeBundo, we'll see you next week. Hopefully one of these one seeds are out because I don't want to become a meme. I'm a meme in more ways than one. And we'll see you later in the week. We got more college basketball to do, all right? Thanks, DeBundo.
Thanks for having me, guys. We'll
come back, recap the NBA weekend. We'll also give you some best bets before we send you on your way. We'll come right back. Boys, obviously the NBA, because this happens every year during the tournament, kind of takes a back seat this weekend with all the tournament games going on. That said, still a lot of action in the association. Raheem, I know you've been multitasking like crazy. If there's a takeaway you had from anything that you saw in the NBA this weekend, what would it be?
The Cleveland Cavaliers are kind of in trouble.
And why do you say that, Raheem?
If this team is not hitting their threes, I think they can be beat. I truly believe it. I mean, you look at them like on that West Coast road trip. I mean, they lose to the Magic. And I know it's March, but you're talking about the last 10, 15 games of the season, and they're not finishing the season very strong. I mean, you lose to the Magic, and then you lose to the Clippers, the Kings, and the Suns. And, I've been speaking at large about how much the Suns have struggled. So to go on this West Coast road trip and struggle the way they have, I think it's Boston's to win. And you saw, the Australian NBA Finals, Jason Tatum, Jason Tatum's dad, he leads them to the NBA to the NBL Finals. They win the championship. I think the Boston Celtics, I think it's theirs to lose. I'd
be stunned if they're not in the NBA Finals, Raheem. Stunned.
Yeah, I thought Cleveland might have a shot, but more and more, I just think it's just Boston's going to win the East. I just don't see any other team winning it.
House, I have a takeaway.
Let me hear it.
I'm going to be betting the Indiana Pacers in the first round of the playoffs.
Okay.
I like what I've seen the last couple of weeks. They have a lot of depth. They have a lot of different ways to beat you from an offensive perspective. Now, I'm assuming they're not getting the Knicks here. But then again, they beat the Knicks last year. Now, Anunoby got hurt. How do you want to weigh that? Jalen Brunson coming back, a lot of variables. I'm going to assume Indiana is in the 4-5, and they're going to play either Milwaukee or Detroit. I will be taking the Indiana Pacers to win that series.
I like that. And look, it's not really going on a limb. That Pacers team was in the Eastern Conference Finals last year.
I know it's weird, though, but we don't talk much about them, House, because of Cleveland in the year they've had, and Boston, and
that's right.
The Knicks being ahead of them. I feel like Indiana, and they didn't get off to a great start this year, but they're playing much better.
And Tyrese Halliburton was not great through the first, sort of 2/3 of the season. They did have injury issues, but I agree with you. They were a nice candidate. We got on the Pacers to exceed their win total right around the new year because they were forecasted very low based on what they showed. And I think they're going to win 46 or 47 games. So I like that one quite a bit, JJ. I think they're in nice position. And Rick Carlisle there against either Detroit or Milwaukee. It's a good matchup. The thing that I've been watching, fellas, is the seeding in this Western Conference. And I have been trying to come up with ways to take advantage of teams falling off here at the end in this play-in game. Now, I'm probably sitting on dead tickets with the Lakers and Denver, both of whom 1 week ago from this moment, I bet on them. The Lakers.
You took a
Nuggets.
shot.
I did. I took a shot. That's exactly right. The thing that changed is Steph Curry got hurt, and Golden State is really positioned. So the only sort of angle I'm considering now, Golden State is still plus money to end up in the play-in tournament. They would basically have to switch positions with Minnesota, because Minnesota right now is the 7 and Golden State is the 6. I kind of like the idea of it's plus 140 for Golden State to end up in that 7 spot. I think that's kind of a reasonable outcome. They have a road trip against all the other West contenders coming up. That's going to be tough. They're at Miami Tuesday, the day this show is published. I expect that with Jimmy Butler's return to Miami to be Golden State handling their business. But then they're on a road trip, 2 road games at Memphis, at the Lakers, home against Denver, home against Houston, at Phoenix. Who knows what Phoenix wants to do? And then 3 games down the stretch, including season-ending game against the Clippers. So possibility of Golden State in the 7 seed. I'm still looking at that.
Buckle up. Minnesota Timberwolves. Get me out of that plan. That's what I'm rooting for here from a West perspective. Get me the Minnesota Timberwolves out of that plan. They are making moves. They're only a half game behind Golden State. They are 2.5 back of Memphis. T-Wolves, 8-2 in their last 10 games, playing some really, really good ball. We'll come back, boys. Best bets. We'll see how we're going to play it. East Coast Bias right after this. Best bet time, real quick. House, what do you got?
Duke minus 9.5. We broke it down during the show. Anything less than 10 points is a must-play, auto-play, slam Duke. Duke minus 9.5.
Raheem.
I'm going to go Ole Miss plus 3.5 against Michigan State. We broke it down earlier. Y'all know how it's going down.
Texas Tech Red Raiders laying to 5.5 against Arkansas. Texas Tech, yes, defensive team. Arkansas, not necessarily buying now that they can go win 3 games in this tournament. I think the line being at 5.5 should tell you something. Duke, Ole Miss, I usually root for the boys. I don't think I am in these cases. Let Duke win and not cover, and let Ole Miss cover and not win. That's what I'm rooting for. For House, Raheem, JJ signing off. Enjoy it. We'll be back later in the week for our second East Coast Bias. Tourney time, baseball time. It's all happening. Be good, everybody.